All right, loneliness in paradise. Nicole, if you could read the first part for us.
We have spent time discussing what marriage is, but now let's ask, what is the purpose of marriage? In Genesis 1:2, as God was creating the world, he looked at what he had done and repeatedly said it was good. This assessment is given 7 times, emphasizing how glorious the created material world is.
Okay, so you guys know that marriage, in the Christian world, we call that a sacred thing because marriage is something that God actually has created. Okay, so we're gonna basically see why did God create marriage in the first place. Then we're gonna have a better answer for what is the purpose. So we started in Genesis. All right, so let's go on.
It is striking then that after God created the first man, he said, "It is not good that man shall be alone." It raises question: how could Adam be not a good condition when he was in a perfect world and had evidently a perfect relationship with God?
Yeah, do you guys ever think about this before? He's in a paradise. This is before sin happened in the world, right? So that statement, and another interesting thing is it doesn't actually say Adam starts complaining to God and say, "Oh, I don't like the fact that I'm alone," right? It actually, God is the one who actually makes this evaluation. Does that make sense? So, like I'm sure I have said this, and I'm sure you have heard this statement, like, "Oh, God should be enough." Well, that's actually not true in this context, right? Because why? Because God actually says, even though he has God, perfect relationship, and he has everything that he wants in paradise, and yet God actually says it's not good that you are alone. Does that make sense? So what does that tell us about how God actually has created us? Joe?
The answer may lie in the statement of God in Genesis 1:6. Let us make man in our own image. Readers instantly ask the question, who is us? From this verse, we can see that God is triune, that the one God has existed from all eternity as 3 persons who know and love one another. Therefore, among other things, we were created in God's image, that we were designed for relationships.
Okay. Does that make sense, guys?
Plural.
Okay. So the idea is when God says, let us make, and then our understanding of God is that God is not just one, but he also is 3 separate beings as well. So that means by nature, right? So I'm going to use a hard word. It means ontology, but that's just the philosophical word. It just means God in nature. He's relational in nature. So I know some people ask, like, did God create human beings because he was lonely? And that answer, at least in the Christian world, is no, because God was already in a relationship. And so therefore also we can say God is love. Does that make sense? Because when you are loved, you have to love somebody. Does that make sense? All right. So the idea is, the reason why God says it's not good for you to be alone is because God created Adam to be relational. So all of us, we all have this relational need. So this idea of loneliness, I know most of us, we usually perceive loneliness as a negative thing. Like if I came up to you and said, "Oh, I feel really lonely," you'd be like, "Oh, like so that's so sad." Like, "Oh," like kind of like that, right? But if I came up to you and said, "Oh, I'm hungry," would you say the same thing? No, you'd be like, "Oh, go eat." So if that's the case, then loneliness is just like a hunger pain for a relationship. Does that make sense? When I'm hungry, you don't go, "Oh, what a weird person." So same thing, when somebody says I'm lonely or you guys feel lonely, you shouldn't say, "Oh, I'm so weird," or "this is something different about," or "something's off about me." Instead, it's just your body telling you, like, I need relationship. So really, what I'm trying to say is loneliness is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just part of us, who we are. Okay? Let's continue on. I think, Dave?
The Genesis narrative is in implying that our intense relational capacity, created and given to us by God, was not fulfilled completely by our vertical relationship with Him. God designed us to need horizontal relationships with other human beings. That is why, even in paradise, loneliness was a terrible thing.
Okay? So once again, if Adam said something along the lines of, God, I don't like this ordeal, I feel alone, and these kind of things, then no problem. But God is actually the one who says to Adam, it's not good for you to be alone. Okay, does that make sense? So that means God created us not only with you know how we talk about like God-shaped hole in our hearts? Not only did He create that, but He also created us with human-shaped or relationship-shaped hole in our hearts as well. That relationship is part of us. Again, this is before sin, before anything negative happened. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, relationship for us, it's a very, very important thing. Germs?
Okay. We should therefore not be surprised to find that all the money, comforts, and pleasures in the world, our efforts to recreate a paradise for ourselves, are unable to fulfill us like God can. This is confirmation of our intuition that family and relationships are a greater blessing and provide greater satisfaction than anything money can buy.
Okay, so I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of movies out there, like rich guy going for money, but then at the end of the, you know how it ends. It's like, oh, family's more important. Again, it's true. Why? Because that's how we were made. That's how we're created. Okay, so whether you are introverted or I'm sure all the extroverted people in here, they're like, yeah, and introverted people are like, eh. But again, regardless, we need relationship. Okay, it's not a preference. Okay, it's a need for every single one of us in here. Let's continue on.
In response to being alone, God created what the text calls an ezer, a word that means a helper, companion, a friend. When the man sees the woman, he responds in poetry, at last, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Some have proposed that he is saying, meaning you fills a void in me. And so we see that, in the beginning, God gave the man a companion to be his spouse. The female speaker in Song of Solomon echoes Adam when she says, this is my lover, this is my friend.
Okay, so we need to be careful not to fall off the horse this way and then get back up and fall off the horse the other way. Okay, what I mean is we have to avoid two extremes. Okay, one extreme is to say relationship is everything. Like my wife or my husband, my girlfriend, boyfriend, like that's everything. So we're not saying that either. We're saying they're important, but we have to understand they're not the ultimate thing. Nor are we just to say, I only need God. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, again, I know that sounds a little weird. All right, even me saying it is weird. But again, within this context, okay, we have to understand God created us for horizontal relationship. Of course, vertical with God, that's very important. But we also have to understand that we have a horizontal need for relationship as well. Okay. All right, what do you guys think so far? Because you guys will have discussion questions just after this. But what do you guys think so far about this whole idea of how God created us? And then after all of this, what God gives him is a friend. What do you guys think so far? Go same group, or even if you guys don't want to do same group, then you guys could just do a couple of people around you guys. Go for it. All right, so let's continue on. So far we've talked about how God created us, okay, for human relationships. And so what God gave us as a solution is marriage. Okay, so specifically a friend. Okay, so we're going to see some of the characteristics of friendship in the Bible. Of course, this is not exhaustive. This is not everything, but these are just a couple of the things that we will talk about. The first one is constancy, okay, or another word is consistency, okay, whatever you want better, okay. So Proverbs 17, friends love at all times, especially during adversities, okay. So I'm sure you guys feel the same way, right? If a friend only comes to you when you're doing well, then peace out if you're not doing that well, then I'm pretty sure you wouldn't call that a good friend. Continuing on, bad friends come over when they are successful, but goes away when things go bad. Second part is called transparency, okay, or honesty or authenticity. Okay, real friends also offer critiques. Okay, for example, faithful are the wounds of friends. That does not of a friend, I think. Okay. So again, this is I think what real true friendship I think really looks like. Okay. Next one, friends become wiser together through a healthy clash of viewpoints as iron sharpens iron, so friends sharpen friends. Okay. So easy way to memorize this is real friends always let you in, transparency, and never let you down. Always let you in and never let you down. Okay, that's what a good friend is. And obviously, as you guys can see from here, Jesus is the best, literally the greatest friend that we have. Okay, because he always lets us in, he never rejects us, and yet he always loves us, despite our unfaithfulness to him. All right, let's continue on. Another thing that is really interesting is this idea of called common passion. Okay, what we mean by that is this. Why don't we? Is it Julie's?
This means that friendships are discovered more than they are distributed at will. They arise between people who discover that they have common interests and longings for the same things. Friendship must be about something, even if it were only an
Enthusiasm
for
Dominoes.
dominoes of white mice. Those who have nothing can share nothing. Those who are going nowhere can have no fellow traveler.
Okay. Okay, so the idea is basically you could only be really, really good friends. In the end, even if you grew up together, if you don't have a common interest or same goals, and this is what happens with friendship, right? We grew up with some people, but they have different goals in life. And because of that, it's hard to really relate and talk to each other for a long time. And so eventually the relationship usually fizzles out. But even a friend that you haven't known for a long time, but if they have similar goals, similar interests, and that's why when strangers, you put together 50,000 strangers in a arena together, cheering for one team, what happens? They're all friends. They're all high-fiving each other and stuff like that. But once they go out, again, does that make sense? But the idea is because there is a common interest, they can, even though they don't know each other, they can really bond together. Does that make sense? So the idea is these three things that we see. All right, why is this important? Ben?
In tribal societies, romance doesn't matter as much as social status. In individual Western societies, romance and great sex matter far more than anything else. The problem with these factors is that they are not durable. People think that non-compatibility based on these things, they often make the painful discovery that they have built their relationship on unstable ground.
Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so tribal society, or long time ago, basically before the Western society, it's really about status. Okay, oh, you're a rich family, I'm a rich family, or I'm a poor family, and you're a rich family, then I want to level up. Okay, I want to marry up. Does that make sense? Right, and that's how a lot of people marry. Or it's for a lot of Eastern culture is a lot about shame, and honor and shame, right? And so it's really about having a family, and having a family. That's very important. And again, that's what matters in the tribal society. Okay, but we talked about how in the Western society, we don't care about that anymore. It's really about our individualistic needs that we have. So mainly, what's going to make me feel good? When a very good-looking person or a rich person or someone who has a lot of pluses likes me and wants to be with me. That makes me feel good. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so within the Western society, romance, great sex, because that's a lot of great pleasure that comes with sex. Okay, so these things are important to me. So they become the ultimate means of the reasons why I want to date or get married. Does that make sense? So now I date whenever I date or get married, I go for romance or great chemistry. Does that make sense? All right, but the idea is none of these last. Okay, let's go into that idea a little bit more. Oh, you read? All right, I'll read. But worst of all, sexual attraction and social class relatability do not give you any common vision. Okay, what is your marriage for? Or where are you going? If you marry mainly for a sexual or financial partner, what will happen when you reach them or fail to reach them? Those who are going nowhere can have no fellow travelers. Okay, so the idea is, let's say you got married because you're really attracted to somebody. So there is a lot of chemistry. So what happens when that fades away? Or what happens when she becomes ugly? Okay, I mean, even Botox goes only so far. Okay, then what happens? Then you just get divorced and marry a younger girl. Okay, or how about the other way around? What if you marry a dude or a girl for financial reasons? Okay, again, that's not a goal. Where are you going after you got married? What happens after that? You're done. That's the reason why you got married. So what happens now? There's no point. Okay. So again, the idea about the common vision, common goal. If your goal is sexual chemistry, that doesn't last. If your goal is financial stability, again, you might have it, but once that's achieved, what do you do? But even with money, it's volatile as well, right? Which means it always goes up and down. Okay. So again, that's why none of these, all of these are unstable graphs. Joanna?
The Bible, however, without ignoring responsibility to the community or the importance of romance, puts great emphasis on marriage as companionship. It is for helping each other to become our future glory selves, the new creations that God will eventually make us. That is why putting a friendship at the heart of a marriage relationship can lift it to a level that no other vision for marriage approaches.
Okay. So again, the idea of friendship and the idea that what's the purpose of marriage then for us now, then it becomes we are heading towards somewhere together. Okay, especially, and that's why in the Bible, they encourage you to marry another Christian. Not because, again, non-Christians are evil or these kind of things, but because you guys are going somewhere together. You have a common vision. Okay, and when you guys have a common vision and you're walking together, then you get a very, very beautiful picture of what marriage could be. Okay, and something that will actually last forever and ever. Okay, like literally, right? Because it's never going to end in that sense. All right, Nicole, let's see what happens.
Work in progress. Paul points husbands to Jesus' sacrificial love towards us, his bride. But Paul does not stop there. He goes on to speak of the goal of that sacrificial love for his bride. That is to sanctify her, to present her to himself in radiant beauty and splendor, to bring her to be perfectly holy and blameless. He wants to remove all spiritual stains, flaws, sins, and blemishes to make us holy, glorious, and blameless.
Okay, and I just put this word here. This is just the technical word that we use at the church or theological level. It's called sanctification. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is Jesus didn't just die for us just to get rid of our sins. Of course, that is a very, very important part of it, but it's so that we could become new creation as well, right? So this idea of he could make us holy, glorious, blameless. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now, then this, in marriage context, becomes really beautiful. Let's see, let's continue on.
Have you ever traveled to a mountainous part of the world where it was cloudy and rainy? You look out your windows and you can see almost nothing. The rain stops and the clouds parts and you can catch your breath because there is the magnificent peak. But a couple of hours later, the clouds roll in and it has vanished and you don't see it again for a good while.
Okay? So basically, or even if you haven't been in this kind of situation, like a fog, right? You see the road and you go through a fog, you don't see anything. You get out of the fog, you see something. Okay? So stay with me. We're getting somewhere. Next.
That is what it is like to get to know a Christian. You have an old self and a new self. The new self is still you, but you liberated from all your sins and flaws. This new self is always a work in progress, and sometimes the clouds of the old self make it almost completely invisible.
Right. And so it's this idea, again, all of us, we're all flawed. But if you become a Christian, you receive the Holy Spirit, and there's a process. And sometimes you really see the beauty of somebody. And that's why, and sometimes you don't. You're like, oh, shoot, she's or he's doing the same thing that he did before. Okay, why? Because all of us are a work in progress in that sense. So kind of like a fog, you see it, but you're still going that way, but sometimes you don't see it at the same time. Does that make sense? All right, so what does this mean? Let's continue on.
Within this Christian vision for marriage, here's what it means to fall in love. It is to look at another person and get a glimpse of the person God has created, and to say, I see who God is making me, and it excites me. I want to be a part of that. I want to partner with you and God in the journey you are taking to His throne. And when we get there, I'll look at your magnificence and say, I always knew you could be like this. I got glimpses of it on earth. Look at you.
Okay, so you guys see where this is going now, right?
Beautiful.
Oh, it's really, really beautiful. Okay? It's this whole idea, again. Now, this friendship marriage, not just benefit marriage, but friendship marriage, then you're going somewhere. Why? Because God is taking you on a journey, and now you're not by yourself anymore, but you and your spouse are helping each other to go there together. Okay? Now, how can this happen? We talked about 3 things, right? One is common vision. You guys are going together. So you're not going alone. You're not walking by yourself. Okay? Number 2, there's constancy. That person doesn't say, oh, you sinned again, I'm out. But instead, is showing you a glimpse of God's love for you so that you can still go on as well. Okay? So that even when you mess up, okay, because you know how we mess up, and it's easy for us to be like, oh, God, you don't love me anymore. I'm just going to go on my sin path, this kind of thing. All of us have gone through something like that before. But a spouse, right? Again, unless you have a really bad spouse, but again, a Christian spouse with a common vision, they can stick through even the hard times of your life. And then with transparency, that helps you as well because they can be honest and say, hey, I don't think you're actually walking towards God. Okay? You could be honest. You could have that kind of a relationship. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's why, again, this becomes really, really beautiful. Okay? Continuing on. Jean?
Most people, when they are looking for a spouse, are looking for a finished statue when they should be looking for a wonderful block of marble. Not so you can create the kind of person you want, but rather because you see what kind of person Jesus is making.
Okay, this is very important, guys. Okay, this don't just read this and then don't read that. Okay, okay, not so that you can create. Okay, not so that you can just mold your own guy or girl. Okay, but so that they become the type of person that Jesus wants. Okay, does that make sense? So again, we talked about this from lesson 1. There's no perfect, compatible person. Why? Because we're always changing. Okay? All of us are sinners. We're all messed up. We're all farting and taking poops. Okay? All the time. Okay? So don't look for a finished statue. Look for a wonderful block of marble. So this also tells us that you shouldn't just date anybody you want either. You should be very serious about your dating and marriage as well. Okay?
So does that mean that you shouldn't go in with someone wanting to change something about them?
No, I don't think that's necessarily, no, not at all. Because this is actually saying wonderful block of marble, right? So you're going in thinking that not you're going to change them, but necessarily that hopefully that as you guys are getting closer to God, that God will change both of you.
Oh, yourself too.
Yeah, yours, of course. But that would be very bad if you go in thinking only she has to change, or that's a setup for a failure. Yeah.
He missed the first few.
Yeah. It's very important you go in thinking, I need to change as well. So that's why it's this idea of common vision, that both of you guys are on this journey together. So it's not you're here and then she's here or he's here, and I just need to bring her over, but both of you guys are going on this road towards God together. Yeah. All right, continuing on. Oh, by the way, I didn't put this, but Michelangelo was asked how he carved his magnificent David. You guys know David? Like he's naked and he's like, David. Okay, and his reply was, I looked inside the marble and just took away the bits that weren't David. Okay, so he saw block of marble, and he says, how did I create it? I just took away the pieces that wasn't David. Okay, and that has a lot of spiritual implications for us, right? Because if all of us had no sin in us, we would be the most delightful people ever. Yeah. If none of us had sin, we would be very, very delightful. Okay, and that's what God wants to do, basically. Essentially, is He wants to take away all the pieces that are not essentially us. Does that make sense? All right. Who's Julia?
This is by no means a naive, romanticized approach. Rather, it is brutally realistic. In this view of marriage, each person says to the other, I see all your flaws, imperfections, weakness, dependencies, but underneath them all I see growing the person God wants you to be.
Okay. So again, this is why, the gospel is the most beautiful thing, because it's very honest with us. It doesn't say, oh, you're just a good person, just try harder, just power up, you have the power within you. No, it says none of those unrealistic things. It actually tells us, no, you're a sinner, that you can't do it by yourself, that you're weak, that you cheat and you do nasty things. But there's hope. Okay, and that's exactly what marriage looks like as well. Okay, it's two people who are broken, but they're trying to go towards God through sanctification and grace and these things. Continuing on. All right, we're going to finish with this. All right.
I'm not saying that you should marry someone when you feel no attraction. The Bible does indicate that your spouse must be more than your friend, but not less. Most of us know that there is some truth, stereotype that men overvalue beauty, their prospective spouse, and that women overvalue wealth and potential mate.
Okay.
But if you marry someone more for these things than for friendship, you not only are setting yourself up for future failure, wealth, mate, and sexual appeal will decrease, but you are also setting yourself up for loneliness. For what Adam in the garden needed was not just a sexual partner, but a companion. If singles accepted this principle, it would drastically change the way people seek a marriage partner.
Okay. Does that make sense? So the idea is you want to marry for a biblical concept of friendship. Okay, someone who you have a common vision. You guys are walking towards Jesus together. Okay, someone you could be honest with. And someone you know that you could, and the whole idea of marriage is the idea of committing, right? That once you put it together, that you're not separating. Okay, so once again, it's very important. We're not saying that money is not important. We're not saying that beauty is not important. We're saying those things are they're not the main thing. Okay, so the main thing you should be really seeking out for is this person, okay, can I be friend with this person? Biblical concept of friendship, of course. Can I be a friend? Okay. So this is what he says. This is the principle that will drastically change the way for us. David?
I just want
Okay. Screen first for friendship. Look for someone who understands you better than you do yourself, who makes you a better person just by being around them, and then explore whether that friendship could become a romantic and a romance and a marriage. There is nothing sexier than a spouse who is understanding and wants to stay committed to you through all your faults. Okay? So again,
Amen.
I was single before. I'm still a dude, so I'm talking to all the dudes. Okay? Screen first for friendships. Again, I'm not saying marry an ugly girl, but screen first for friendship. And then for ladies, I'm sorry for my male partners, my male friends, that you guys have to go through all the horribleness. All right, that's it. Let's go into our discussion questions together, and then if you...
Sorry. So we don't have female friends. Bro. Set us up to fail.